Impeachment of President Trump is happening right now. This is the House of Representatives. It's just done something historic. It has voted on the first article of impeachment, abuse of power, and the Democrats have won a majority. That means President Trump, no matter how much he objects, will forever be known as the third American president to ever be impeached.
Trump's own supporters are turning against him. Not politicians, not media personalities, not cable news pundits, but ordinary Americans, the people who wore the red hat, the people who stood in line for hours at his rallies, the people who pulled the lever for him in November 2024, genuinely believing that he was going to make their lives better. These were the factory workers, the truck drivers, the small business owners, the retirees who scrimped and saved through the previous years of inflation and uncertainty. They pinned their hopes on Donald Trump, convinced by his words, his rallies, and his repeated assurances that he alone could fix the economy, lower prices, and bring back the kind of prosperity they remembered or dreamed about. But now, in the spring of 2026, that faith is crumbling at the gas pumps, in the grocery aisles, and around kitchen tables across the heartland states that delivered him back to the White House. Take Francisco Castillo, a 43-year-old factory worker in Iowa. He stood next to his son's Ford pickup truck at a gas station just this week, the kind of place where pickup trucks and work boots are the norm, where conversations about bills and overtime dominate. Francisco voted for Trump because he heard the promises loud and clear. Trump said he would bring gas prices down, way down, and make everyday life affordable again. Instead, Francisco watched as the war in Iran escalated everything. The numbers on the pump climbed relentlessly, turning what used to be a routine fill-up into a painful hit to the wallet. He said he was going to bring gas down, Francisco explained, shaking his head as the dollars ticked higher. But the war in Iran is now making everything worse. Food is up, everything that gets shipped is up. How am I supposed to keep up? His story is not unique. It echoes across countless small towns and rural communities where people like him form the backbone of Trump's political support. In Georgia, another Trump voter from an NPR focus group put it bluntly, "I see my pocketbook being hit hard and he's building a new ballroom we don't need. How about you put some money toward us instead?" This voter, a working mother who had backed Trump enthusiastically in 2024, felt the betrayal deeply. Another participant in the same group called Trump an agent of chaos. "I feel like Trump went into this war without a real plan," she said, her voice carrying the weight of disappointment. "These are not Democrats. These are not liberal activists. These are his people, real people at real gas stations in real towns in the very states that put him back in the White House." The polls are now matching what these everyday Americans are saying out loud. A staggering 55% of all Americans now support impeaching Trump. That figure places him in the same dangerous territory as Richard Nixon at the peak of the Watergate scandal. And buried inside that number is the single most alarming statistic for the Republican Party heading into the November midterms. 1 in 5 of Trump's own 2024 voters now support impeachment. Not just disapprove of him, not just feel let down or disappointed. They actively want him removed from office. The very people who powered his comeback are now saying, "Take him out." Meanwhile, Donald Trump and his party are paying a steep political price. Recent polls show Trump's approval rating has fallen to just 34%, with 64% of Americans disapproving of the job he is doing as president. Only 22% approve of his handling of the cost of living, the very issue that more than anything else propelled him back into the White House in 2024. Voters told pollsters again and again that inflation and high prices were their top concerns, and Trump positioned himself as the fixer. His overall approval on the economy stands at a dismal 27%, lower than at any point since he first entered the political arena. This is not abstract political noise. It is a direct consequence of broken promises colliding with harsh economic reality. The story begins with the promise itself, the one that defined the 2024 campaign. Donald Trump repeated it endlessly at rallies, in debates, in advertisements, and in interviews. Gas below $2 a gallon within 12 months, not somewhat lower. Not lower than under Biden. $2 exactly. He went further, pledging to cut energy prices in half across the board. "Under the Trump economic plan, we will cut your energy prices in half," he declared time and time again. "Within 12 months, your energy prices will be cut in half. Mark it down. You can get very angry at me if we don't do it." He said it for homes, for businesses, for farmers. "My plan will cut energy and electricity prices in half within 12 months of taking the oath of office." The applause was thunderous every time. Working-class voters crushed by the cost of living under the previous administration looked at Trump and heard a savior. Francisco Castillo heard it. The retired gas station owner in Georgia heard it. The independent voter in Florida, the truck driver in Pennsylvania, millions of ordinary Americans heard it and believed. Trump won the 2024 election in large part because of that promise. He held double-digit advantages over his opponent on the economy, on inflation, and especially on energy prices. On February 28, 2026, 13 months after taking office, the United States launched military strikes against Iran in Operation Epic Fury. 3 Iranian nuclear sites were bombed. The supreme leader was reported killed. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil supply flows, was closed. Gas prices that day sat at $2.83 a gallon. Today, they have surged to $4.30. That represents a 52% increase in just 2 months. It is the highest gas price of Trump's entire political career, higher than anything seen in his first term, higher than the levels he promised he would never allow. Trump promised $2 gas. He delivered $4.30, and the ordinary people who trusted him are paying the difference every single week. This pain is not distributed evenly across the country. The Wall Street Journal analyzed AAA data and found that the states hit hardest are not blue coastal enclaves, they are Trump's political strongholds. Indiana saw prices jump 58 cents in a single week. Michigan climbed 72 cents. Ohio rose 60 cents. Wisconsin ranked among the highest increases nationwide. Iowa kept climbing steadily. Florida added 57 cents in 1 week alone. These are the battleground states, the places where MAGA flags waved from pickup trucks, where rallies drew massive crowds, where key Senate and House races will decide control of Congress in November 2026. People in these communities feel the impact physically every time they drive to work, pick up their kids, or haul goods for their small businesses. Fortune magazine sent reporters to Iowa, Michigan, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Georgia to speak with real voters. In Iowa, Francisco Castillo shared his frustrations at the pump. In Florida, Tyler Knepp, a 23-year-old Republican-leaning entrepreneur running a startup in Orlando, sighed and said, "You've just got to fill it up and bite the bullet and hope that the prices go back down. That's all I can really do." A 67-year-old independent voter in the same state who had supported Trump expressed gratitude for earlier reasonable prices but warned that if they hit $5 a gallon, he would stop traveling altogether. His truck gets only 8 miles per gallon, making every trip a calculated expense. In Georgia, Ken Shuttlesworth, a 70-year-old IT manager, criticized Trump's approach. "He follows his instincts instead of policy," he said. "He should have consulted Congress before starting this war. I worry about my children and grandchildren who live closer to the financial margins." In an NPR focus group of Georgia swing voters, many of whom had voted for Trump or seriously considered it, every single participant reported greater anxiety about the economy now than when Trump took office. One man named Joe lamented, "I see my pocketbook being hit and he's building a new ballroom for some reason we don't need. How about you put some money toward us?" Another described Trump as an agent of chaos who entered the war without a real plan. These voices are not from partisan echo chambers. They come from gas stations and living rooms in the precise states that secured Trump's victory. The scale of the shift is historic when you look at the broader data. A Reuters/Ipsos poll from late April 2026 pegged Trump's approval at 34% with 64% disapproval. The Quinnipiac University national poll showed only 38% of registered voters approving his handling of the economy, matching the all-time lows of both his terms. On the specific issue of cost of living, the one that won him the election, approval sits at a shocking 22%. Among Republicans, approval of Trump's economic handling is 20 points lower than on immigration. Immigration was supposed to be the unbreakable floor. The economy is collapsing through it. 65% of Americans blame Trump either a lot or some for the rise in gas prices, according to Quinnipiac. Not just Democrats and independents, but 2/3 of the entire country. Conservative pollster Whit Ayers, who works for Republican candidates, acknowledged the problem. Based on the perception of American consumers, the economy has not gotten better and inflation has gotten worse. That's a problem when you've run on a promise of lowering inflation and increasing the economy. For the first time since 2010, voters trust Democrats more than Republicans on the economy. Working-class voters who gave Trump a double-digit edge in November 2024 have flipped in less than 15 months. CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Leisman explained the hidden damage. Real incomes, inflation-adjusted, are down 2 months in a row. People are earning less in real terms, yet spending holds steady only because they are draining savings. The savings rate has fallen as Americans pull from emergency funds, retirement accounts, and college savings to cover gas, food, and oil-dependent goods. People are drawing from savings to keep their lifestyles in the same place they were before. Leisman noted, that can't go on forever. The Federal Reserve, which Trump tried to reshape for lower interest rates, is stuck. Inflation hit 3.5% in late April data, the worst since 2023. Oil prices are pushing it higher. Trump's hand-picked Fed chair cannot deliver the rate cuts needed. The war Trump started has locked the economy into a painful cycle. This pain stems directly from the decision to launch Operation Epic Fury. Before the strikes, Trump promised decisive results. Iran's nuclear program decimated, the regime changed, proxies defunded, the Strait of Hormuz reopened quickly, military capabilities destroyed. 15 months later, none of that has materialized. Nuclear capabilities remain. The strait stays effectively closed, proxies continue receiving support, peace talks in Islamabad collapsed, a naval blockade briefly sent oil to $120 a barrel before partial retreat, Miles Taylor, former chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security in Trump's first term, assessed it grimly. In almost every scenario, it looks like the United States will end up worse off vis-a-vis Iran than it was before. None of those objectives have been achieved. Trump himself admitted on Fox News that gas prices might not fall before the midterms. I hope so. I think so. It could be. Or the same, or maybe a little bit higher. The man who vowed $2 gas now offers uncertainty or possible increases. Comparisons to past unfulfilled promises resurfaced, like claims that a certain virus would disappear like a miracle. The abandonment has spread to Trump's media and political inner circle. Tucker Carlson, once a rally speaker whose family ties ran deep into the administration, said on his podcast that he regrets helping elect Trump. He called the Iran war the biggest mistake of any president in his lifetime, tormented by his role, and apologized to his audience. Megyn Kelly, who had reconciled with Trump, labeled the war a betrayal of campaign promises. Alex Jones, a longtime vocal supporter, turned sharply against him. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the most loyal allies in Congress, reacted to threats against Iran's civilization by calling it evil and madness, even invoking the 25th Amendment. Rand Paul warned of disastrous midterm results if oil stays above $100 a barrel. Rick Scott, a Trump ally, conceded after briefings that prices would remain high for a while. In Millersburg, Pennsylvania, a swing district in a swing state, a Trump voter told a New Republic reporter that the president was a worthless pile of frustration over the war. Trump's response on Truth Social dismissed critics as not real MAGA. They are not MAGA. I am. The movement's architect now questions the loyalty of his own base over the cost of filling their trucks. The impeachment numbers tell an unprecedented story. A Strength in Numbers Vericite poll from April 10 through 14, 2026, found 55% of American adults support a House vote to impeach Trump, 37% oppose, 8% unsure. Pollster G. Elliott Morris noted this puts Trump near Nixon's Watergate peak of 58%. Crucially, 21% of Trump's own 2024 voters back impeachment. There is a 15-point intensity gap, with strong support for removal outpacing strong opposition. Among independents, 50% support impeachment versus 28% opposed. Another poll showed 52% of likely 2026 voters favoring removal, with 46% strongly so. Prediction markets give 67% odds of impeachment before 2028. While Republicans currently control the House and no members have signaled support, the midterms loom. Democrats need only a small net gain to flip control. With gas prices, broken promises, an unplanned war, and 1 in 5 former Trump voters calling for removal, the environment has shifted dramatically from the euphoria of 2024. Beyond politics, real stakes affect real families. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell warned of cascading pain. Airline fares will rise. Goods and services tied to petroleum will cost more. Fertilizer prices derived from oil are spiking, threatening next year's grocery bills as farmers pass on costs. Inflation at 3.5% keeps interest rates high, squeezing mortgages, car loans, and credit cards. Savings are being depleted to maintain lifestyle. When those funds run dry, choices become brutal. Drive to work or save money, heat the home or feed the family, pay the car note or fill the tank. These calculations happen daily in homes across America. Francisco Castillo in Iowa makes them. The retired gas station owner in Georgia makes them. The 67-year-old in Florida wondering about travel makes them. The young Republican in Orlando biting the bullet makes them. They trusted a man who promised relief, but conditions worsened dramatically. The documentation is clear and undeniable. Trump promised $2 gas within 12 months. The national average now stands at $4.30, verified by AAA and Gas Buddy. Hardest hit states are Trump's strongholds: Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa, per Wall Street Journal and AAA. Real incomes down 2 months straight. Savings rate declining as people draw down reserves, per CNBC and Federal Reserve. 65% blame Trump for gas spikes, per Quinnipiac. Approval on cost of living at 22%, per Quinnipiac. Democrats now trusted more on the economy for the first time since 2010, per multiple analyses. 55% support impeachment, near Nixon levels. 1 in 5 2024 Trump voters back removal. Prominent former allies like Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Alex Jones, and Marjorie Taylor Greene have publicly broken ranks. Republican senators have voiced concerns about prolonged high prices and midterm risks. Trump himself conceded possible higher prices ahead. Real voters in key states have expressed anger, frustration, and betrayal on record. Looking ahead, the fertilizer crisis looms as a slow-motion disaster. Higher input costs for farmers will translate into elevated food prices by late 2026 and into 2027. This compounds the existing strain from transportation and packaging costs tied to energy. Families already stretching savings will face another round of difficult choices. School budgets, municipal services, and healthcare costs will feel secondary effects as energy remains elevated. The Federal Reserve's reluctance to cut rates preserves stability in some areas but prolongs the pain for borrowers. Trump's efforts to influence the Fed earlier in the term now appear counterproductive in the current inflationary environment. Ordinary Americans continue adapting in small but meaningful ways. Some carpool to work. Others consolidate errands to minimize driving. Many hunt for side gigs to offset rising expenses. Yet these adjustments cannot fully compensate for systemic increases. The psychological toll accumulates as optimism from the 2024 victory fades into daily grind. Children hear parents discuss budgets instead of future dreams. Communities notice local businesses closing or reducing hours. The human stories multiply. The single mother in Michigan skipping extracurricular activities for her kids to afford gas for her commute. The retiree in Ohio rationing medication because utility bills spiked alongside fuel. The young couple in Pennsylvania postponing their wedding due to venue and travel costs inflated by energy.